ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that the truth did not explode into Lulu's life all at once. It did not arrive with sirens, shattered glass, or a confession spoken aloud in the middle of a room. It came in fragments, in the trembling silence after disaster, in the look on Rocco's face, in the unnatural urgency in Nathan's voice, and in the cold, unbearable realization that her son had crossed a line no mother is ever prepared to face. By the time Lulu fully understood that Rocco was the one who had shot Cullum, the damage had already begun spreading through every fragile connection around her. It was no longer just about fear. It was about loyalty, judgment, motherhood, and the kind of secret that poisons everyone forced to carry it. In that moment, Lulu stopped being just a frightened mother trying to protect her child. She became part of a conspiracy, part of a desperate wall built to keep Dante from learning the truth, and every hour that wall remained standing only made its inevitable collapse more brutal. What made the situation even more unbearable was that Lulu did not have the luxury of reacting as only a mother. She had to react as someone who knew exactly who Dante was. He was not merely Rocco's father, not merely the man tied to her through years of love, pain, history, and responsibility. He was a man shaped by law, duty, and the need to believe that the world still made sense when rules were followed. To hide something like this from Dante was not just an act of secrecy. It was an act of betrayal aimed at the center of who he was. Lulu understood that immediately, and that understanding tore at her from the inside. Yet fear moved faster than guilt. The image of Rocco, panicked, shaken, and barely able to process what he had done, drowned out every other consideration. The instinct to protect her child rose above everything else. Nathan knew that. Nathan leaned into that. And in doing so, he pulled Lulu into a decision that felt necessary in one moment and unforgivable in the next. Nathan did not see the situation through the same emotional lens, but his own desperation was just as intense. He believed that once the truth touched official channels, Rocco's life would be shattered beyond repair. He saw a vulnerable teenager who had stumbled into violence, not a criminal who deserved exposure. But Nathan's determination to contain the damage came with its own darkness. The more he insisted that silence was the only solution, the more controlling he became. He framed secrecy as protection, but beneath that was something more dangerous, a growing belief that he alone understood what had to be done. That belief made him reckless. It made him dismiss the moral consequences of cutting Dante out. It made him treat Lulu's fear as something to direct instead of something to share, and it made him underestimate the explosive emotional cost of forcing a mother to lie to the father of her child. Lulu tried to convince herself that the secret could remain temporary, that there would be time to think, time to calm Rocco, time to decide what version of the truth could be survived. But secrets involving blood, fear, and police investigations never stay still. They begin to mutate. Every question from Dante became sharper. Every look from Rocco became more fragile. Every mention of Jason, Britt, or Cullum felt like a blade drawn slowly across the same wound. Lulu started living in two realities at once. In one, she was the mother protecting her traumatized son from destruction. In the other, she was lying to a man who had every right to know, every right to act, and every right to feel wounded beyond measure when the deception came to light. The pressure of holding both realities at once began changing her. She grew defensive too quickly, emotional in the wrong moments, distracted when she needed to be calm. Her guilt began leaking through in small ways, and that only increased the danger. Rocco, meanwhile, was falling apart under the weight of what he had done. He was too young to understand the full legal consequences, but old enough to understand that a gun had gone off in his hand and a man had fallen because of it. He replayed the moment endlessly, not with the coldness of someone hardened by violence, but with the spiraling panic of a boy whose life had split into a before and after. He needed comfort, but every attempt to protect him also trapped him deeper inside the nightmare. Being told to stay quiet did not calm him. It isolated him. It taught him that survival now depended on silence, performance, and fear. His relationship with Lulu began to strain under that pressure because the more she tried to shield him, the more he sensed that she was afraid not just for him, but of him, of what he had done, of what he might say next, of what this truth could destroy. That shift was subtle at first, but devastating. Lulu still loved her son with the fierceness only a mother can know, yet the innocence between them had been damaged. She began watching him too closely, listening to every change in tone, wondering whether he was about to confess, break down, or make things worse. Rocco felt that scrutiny and started retreating. Shame turned into resentment. He began to feel as if his mother no longer saw him as her child, but as a disaster she was struggling to contain. That emotional distance became one of the cruelest consequences of the shooting. The very act of protecting him started unraveling the trust he needed most. Lulu wanted to hold him tighter, but every lie she told for his sake placed another wall between them. And then there was Dante, standing at the center of a storm he could feel but not yet see. He sensed almost immediately that something was wrong. Jason's behavior did not add up. Britt's distress carried more than fear. Lulu's energy shifted in ways he knew too well to ignore. Rocco looked haunted. Nathan, once someone Dante trusted deeply, now moved with the guarded tension of a man carrying information he had no intention of sharing. Dante was not the kind of man who let instincts go unanswered. The more those instincts sharpened, the more relentless he became. But what gave his search such emotional force was not simply his role as an investigator. It was the unbearable feeling that people he loved were building a world of truth without him. That realization awakened a far uglier anger than simple suspicion. Dante began to feel humiliated. Not publicly, not dramatically, but intimately. The mother of his son was lying to his face. His former closest friend was making decisions about his child without him. His son was unraveling in front of him, and someone had decided he was better off ignorant. That was not protection. To Dante, it was theft. It was the theft of his authority as a father, the theft of his ability to intervene, and the theft of his trust in the people who had once stood closest to him. The more he pieced together the inconsistencies, the more personal the investigation became. He was no longer only searching for facts about a shooting, he was hunting the shape of a betrayal. His anger toward Jason deepened first. Jason's willingness to step into the line of fire and manipulate the story immediately told Dante that the truth had been rearranged for a reason. Jason was not acting like a random suspect or even a desperate man protecting himself. He was acting like someone taking a fall for another person. Once Dante realized that, every instinct in him turned sharper, darker, and more unforgiving. He began looking at Jason not with detached suspicion, but with fury. In Dante's mind, Jason had helped create a shield around the truth, and that shield was now blocking a father from reaching his own son. It did not matter that Jason's motives may have been sacrificial. What mattered to Dante was that Jason had participated in a deception that touched his family. That alone made him a target of Dante's rage. Britt became another source of emotional conflict. Dante could see that she knew more than she was saying. Her fear did not look like the fear of a bystander. It looked like the fear of someone caught inside a trap she could no longer control. Dante pushed harder in his own mind, harder than he perhaps should have, because every evasive glance from Britt felt like further proof that the truth was being managed around him. He began to resent her silence, even while recognizing that she too may have been dragged into the chaos against her will. This created a bitter contradiction inside him. Part of him still wanted to be fair, to separate the frightened from the guilty. Another part wanted to tear through every carefully arranged lie and force someone, anyone, to finally stop protecting the wrong people. But his most dangerous emotional turn came when his frustration began bleeding onto Rocco himself. Dante did not know the whole truth yet, but he knew enough to sense that his son was at the center of something catastrophic. That knowledge twisted his fear into severity. He started studying Rocco more intently, asking harder questions, pressing in subtle ways that a terrified teenager could only experience as pressure. Dante was not trying to hurt his son. He was trying to reach him before the lie consumed him completely. Yet pain often disguises itself as force, and Dante's desperation began taking on the edge of emotional aggression. The more Rocco withdrew, the more Dante pushed. The more Dante pushed, the more fragile Rocco became. It was a cycle, built from love but shaped by fear, and it threatened to damage them both. As Port Charles absorbed the shockwaves of the shooting, the situation grew bigger than any one family could control. Rumors spread, loyalties hardened. Questions multiplied around Jason, Britt, Marco, and Cullum. The city began reacting the way it always does, when violence exposes the fault lines beneath private lives. What had begun as one terrible moment now infected the atmosphere around the hospital, the police department, and the families bound to both. Everyone seemed to sense that the official version of events was unstable. That instability turned the truth into currency, and suddenly every relationship became vulnerable to manipulation. People began making calculations. Who would be protected? Who would be sacrificed? Who was lying? And who could still be trusted? That is how chaos grows in Port Charles, not only from the act itself, but from the fear that follows when too many people know that the story is wrong. Lulu found herself crushed between two impossible futures. In one, she told Dante the truth and watched him explode, perhaps at her, perhaps at Nathan, perhaps at Jason, perhaps even at himself for not seeing it sooner. In the other, she continued hiding the truth until it emerged on its own, uglier, harsher, and stripped of any chance for mercy. Neither future offered peace. Both threatened to destroy the fragile structure around Rocco. And beneath all of that was Lulu's own private horror, the dawning realization that her efforts to protect her son might permanently alter the kind of mother she believed herself to be. She had always wanted to be Rocco's safe place. Now she was asking him to live inside a lie. She had always wanted honesty between them. Now she was teaching him that love might require concealment. That contradiction became unbearable. Nathan, too, began to feel the consequences of his own choices. He had stepped forward as protector, strategist, fixer. But the longer the secret survived, the more he understood the personal cost of what he had done. He had not just helped Lulu, he had helped create a war between her and Dante. He had not just shielded Rocco. He had helped force a terrified boy into silence. He had not just managed a crisis. He had inserted himself into the most emotionally explosive corner of a family already carrying years of unresolved pain. And once Dante finally connected the pieces, Nathan would not just be judged as a man who made a hard call. He would be judged as someone who looked a father in the eye and decided that father had no right to the truth. That is what makes the coming fallout so devastating. This is no longer merely a secret about who pulled a trigger. It is about who gets to decide what justice looks like when the person at the center of the crime is a child. It is about the line between protection and corruption. It is about how quickly love becomes manipulation when fear takes control. It is about whether Dante can ever forgive being shut out, whether Lulu can forgive herself for doing it, whether Nathan can survive the consequences of believing he could manage everyone's pain, and whether Rocco can emerge from this without being permanently marked by the adults who claim to be saving him. Sooner or later, the truth will surface. It always does, and when it does, it will not arrive gently. It will rip through the lies, strip every justification down to its ugliest core, and force each person to face what they became in the name of protecting Rocco. Dante's fury will not come only from the shooting. It will come from the realization that while he was trying to hold his world together, the people closest to him were deciding what kind of father he was allowed to be. Lulu's grief will not come only from what Rocco did. It will come from the knowledge that fear turned her into someone her son could no longer fully lean on. Nathan's downfall will not come only from the secret. It will come from believing he could contain an emotional catastrophe without becoming part of it himself. And at the heart of it all stands Rocco, a frightened boy surrounded by adults making impossible choices, absorbing their panic, their guilt, their anger, and their damage. That may be the cruelest truth of all. The gunshot shattered more than one night. It shattered the illusion that this family could survive by burying pain instead of confronting it. Now poor Charles is moving toward a reckoning that feels inevitable, and every step closer to that reckoning brings more tension, more suspicion, more emotional violence. What began as a desperate attempt to protect a child is turning into a chain reaction of betrayal, and when it finally explodes, no one involved will be able to pretend they were untouched by it.